Okay, so we had a test, and apparently there were some difficulties in a couple of the sections in letter C. So I want to go through the solutions of these examples. So starting off with letter A, we have three fractions being multiplied. Notice there are no negative exponents, so our first step is simply to combine them all into one big fraction. Now we look at the numerical coefficients. You got the 6 and the 5. That's going to be a 30 up on top. You're going to have a b squared. And combining these a's, that's going to be a squared times a, which is a cubed. Now, many students got mixed up with the negative, thinking it meant move it to the bottom. It actually just means a negative coefficient. In the denominator, we have 5 times 2 is 10, a cubed, and b makes b squared. And the cancellation that goes on here is going to should be pretty straightforward. The b squareds cancel, the a cubes canceled, and then reducing the 10 and the negative 30 is going to make that a 3 and a 1 when we put them together. So your final answer is just negative 3 over 1, but you don't have to write that. Question B has an exponent outside the bracket, and we need to multiply that exponent against the other exponents that are inside. It's the distributive property of powers over multiplication. So we have 5 multiplications to do, and it's a real mess, so I'll just delete that for now. And let's take a look what happens when we multiply. Now 16 to the half, you might want to work that out right away, but a lot of students messed up and said it was going to be 8. The 8 times the half is going to be 4, and on the t, the exponent's going to be 6. In the denominator, the exponents are going to be cut in half also, so it's t to the 2, r to the 5. Putting this together, as I said, the 16 to the half is not 8, it's actually 4, because it means square root. Working through the cancellations on the r's, I've got 4 r's up on top and 5 on the bottom, so there'll be 1 left here. And I have 6 t's on the top and only 2 on the bottom, so that's going to be t to the 4 on top. So cleaning that up a little bit, we write it nicely. 4 t to the 4 on top, r on the bottom. Question C. Similar to question A, except it's already grouped together for us, so it should be a little bit easier. I'm going to work across first because it shows up a little bit better. The p cubed and the p squared. The p squared is going to disappear and you leave p to the 1. The m's are going to battle it out and they're going to cancel to give me just a 1 for both. And in the 18 and the 6th, 18 goes in to, oh, you can't cancel the 18 because that's a 6 squared there. So we're going to have to do that in 2 steps as we go through the next bit. Putting the line 18n squared, and the negative 6 squared is still going to be 36 with a negative in front because the negative is not part of the base, and the p. Now we can reduce the 36 over the 18 over 36, that's going to be 1 and 2. Final answer is going to be n squared over p. Now there's a negative in there, I'm going to put it on the top. Question D. We have powers of 5 and powers of x. In fact, they are powers of negative 5 in many of the cases, and we're going to see what happens there. Now in the first one, I got a negative 5 squared and an x, so that's going to give me 25 positive with an x squared. It's positive because the negative in the bracket. And when I do the next one, I'm going to have negative 5x squared. And the last term, well, I don't want to have to do 5 to the 7. In fact, that's going to be a pretty crazy number. So I'm going to leave it as negative 5 to the 7. Notice it's going to stay negative because it's an odd exponent. And x to the 7. Now I got to backtrack to the 25 here and realize that if I'm going to be combining these bases of 5s, I better get rid of the value and just leave it as negative 5 squared. But like I said before, this is going to be a positive 5 squared. Putting it all together, I've got the 3 5s, so that's going to be 5 to the 2, 5 to the 1, and 5 to the 7, which is 5 to the 10. X squareds come together, and it's going to be x squared, and x to the 7 is x to the 11. Now, as far as the sign in the front goes, I have 2 negatives, so it's going to be a positive. Don't have to put anything. Letter E, we've got the 2 ways of doing this question. The first way I'm going to do it is to put the negative 1 exponent in there right away. So that's going to be 3 to the positive 1, c to the positive 2, and d to the negative 4. Underneath, it's going to be 2 to the negative 1, c to the 0, still going to be 0 because you're multiplying, and d to the negative 5. Now we do the upstairs, downstairs, happy, sad rule, whatever you want to call it. We have the 3 and the c squared are going to stay up on top. D to the 4 is going to go to the bottom. On the bottom, I have 2 to the negative 1 is going to go up as 2 to the positive 1. C to the 0 is going to disappear and just become a 1 multiplier, so I don't have to write it. And d to the negative 5 is going to be d to the 5 up on top. I'm going to be doing a little bit of cleaning up. The d to the 4 is going to cancel with the d to the 5, and you're going to be left with just 1 at the top. So when I get to the next line, 6, 3 times 2 is 6, c squared, and d. And the denominator, well, there actually isn't a denominator because it canceled out. So it's actually a denominator of 1 if you wanted to put it there. Now the second way I'm going to do this question is to actually clean up the bracket before I multiply the exponent of 1, negative 1. So upstairs, downstairs, we'll do this again. I'm going to have 3 to the 1 on the bottom, c to the 2 on the bottom, d to the 4 stays up, d to the 5 stays on the bottom. You've also got a 2 that's going to stay on the bottom, and the c to the 0 is just going to be a 1 again. And so the exponent of negative 1 affects the entire bracket. When you have a negative exponent on a fraction, the easiest way to handle it is to just reciprocal the whole thing. In other words, flip-flop, d4 goes to the bottom, 3 to the 1 goes up, c squared, 2, a d to the 5. So they just swap positions. And now cleaning it up, no more negative exponents, nothing to worry about. So we have 6 c squared d to the 5 over 4, d to the 4. And then you can do the cancellation just like we did it the other time. D to the 4 disappears, and you'll be left with d to the 1 up on the top when we put it together as a final answer, 6c squared d.